I'd like to bring this meeting Monday, March 3rd, 2025 of the Planning Commission order. First line of business is our invocation. Would you lead us in that?
Praise me if you will. Heavenly Father, we ask that you please watch over this committee and the planning staff and guide us to wise and safety-conscious decisions in support of the public. We also ask that you watch over the county law enforcement, first responders, and other county workers as they perform their duties, that they may return home safely to their families after every shift. And we ask that you please watch over the county and state leaders as they work to make the county and state a better place to live each day. And also, please keep the people who are dealing with the wildfires on the mountain in your thoughts and prayers. In his name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right. Say the pledge with me. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We've got last meeting's minutes in front of us. Do I hear an approval of those minutes?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Did we elect the officers at our first meeting or our second meeting?
Second.
We did at the
We
second
met in
meeting?
January before we had a full commission.
Okay. All right. I just saw that there and I was going, I don't remember. Okay. All those in favor of the minutes, if there are no changes, or are there any changes that anybody saw? No changes. All those in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
All right. We have public comments for non-agenda items. I've got one email I'll read into the record here. This is from Richard. Last name is spelled Kozicki. The email says, please consider a tree ordinance that is badly needed in Oconee County to prevent developers in their policy of clear cutting of mature trees in effort to save money and time when development is being graded. We as taxpayers are sick and tired of seeing Oconee County's natural beauty being destroyed by greedy developers that have no consideration or regard for mature growth trees. All right, do we have any commission member comments? No commission member comments. I'd just like to say thank you to the people that are here. And we'll move on to planning staff comments.
Do you have a subdivision to share with you guys this evening? Take this and this is Hidden Falls Phase 2. And then the next 2 pages are kind of a blow up of those proposed lots. Going all the way down to the lake.
Can you show us where this is on the county?
Yeah, that's what I was just pulling up. So here's the 35-acre piece. This is the largest portion of this, and this is where it does tie into the lake. If you'll remember back, some of y'all were here, about a year and a piece ago, we rezoned this from control free to lake residential to be the second phase of this development, so this has been in planning for 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Is that it?
It is, we've given them their preliminary comments, and they are making those revisions at this point, so that will change a little bit. just based on that. But this is pretty close to what we'll probably end up seeing.
All right.
Looks like it's down on the Cane Creek portion of the lake, upper end. Yeah.
All right, that takes us to item 8. It is a rezoning request for parcel 111-24-01-010. Mr. Pulliam, I believe this deals with your property. I don't see you signed up, but were you wanting to say anything?
No, not at this time.
Okay. All right, so it's the planning commission's job is to make a recommendation to council regarding the rezoning request. The property is currently zoned both LRD, which is Lake Residential District, and CCD, which is the Community Commercial District. The owner is requesting, for whatever reason, it got put into 2 different zoning categories, and the owner's requesting that the entire parcel be zoned as CCD. Chapter 8, for the new folks that are up here, Chapter 38 describes the various zoning districts. It describes lake residential, for example, as those areas around the lake where primary land is single-family residential use with the intent of the district focus on residential community development. Chapter 38 also describes the intent of community commercial district, and it is to support low-intensity commercial activities centered around providing services to an adjacent community, like a kennel or a hair salon. Chapter 38 also contains the zoning matrix, which shows us the allowable uses. And in the matrix, for example, under the community commercial, which are not allowed in, say, Lake Residential, would be things like a convenience store or a daycare or an accountant's office or a small restaurant or a gas station, things like that. This parcel that is being requested looks to be a roughly 3/4 of an acre directly on Highway 130. And it does not seem practical that you would build a single-family residential home, considering that next door is a gas station and a place of business and a small convenience store and things like that. So currently, as we see up here just north of the pink area, it's currently set up as lake residential with the current intent to put a house there. But since it sits right on 130, doesn't necessarily seem practical, at least in my mind. Considering the parcel is adjacent to a parking lot with a real estate office, a hair salon, a gas station, a little retail wine shop, if somebody's been up that section of 130 and knows where I'm talking about, a small restaurant, the Subway is up there across from the fire station. This is that area that we're talking about, and the request is being made that it be turned to community commercial, which I'm assuming is the pink area that sits adjacent to it. So, it is open for discussion.
I got a question. So parcel 111-24-01-001 looks to me like it's got a strip of lake residential
Right here.
too.
Yeah.
So if those people will come forward to
It's the same owner.
the same owner, Mr. Pulliam
It is.
owns both.
Yes.
So why is he not asking to get that one changed as well?
We can amend the request. So, can you see the screen? This
He looks like he doesn't know that that's the case.
also does have a piece that's in Lake Residential as well. Can you see the screen? So this little bit right here.
The GIS mapping shows to be a little different than that straight line right there for whatever reason. The blue area, the pink area, I'm not sure what the red line is.
So here is The original parcel lines at the time that these all went in, and there were 9 parcels that went into community commercial, and 1 parcel that went into lake residential.
If
This
you,
was that at the time.
looking at this map, you see that the parcel that we're talking about actually goes into the parking lot a little bit. But when you had the red line up there, it had the parking lot completely into the other parcel, so.
So
it-
this was at the time in 2011. This was the parcel lines in 2011.
Okay,
And then subsequently, so this piece was revised in, I can't read that, I'm sorry. 2020,
okay.
so this was now straightened out.
So there's the piece right there.
Yep. It's gonna be the
In the
difference
other
between
parcel.
the 2 pieces.
So James, what does that mean? Does that mean that the parcel that is the 009 parcel?
001, I think?
001.
No, below that, the pink area now, is that 001?
It is, this is 001.
So 001 now contains a small segment of no man's land that is currently lake residential.
It does.
Does that hurt anything, or does that also need to be
It
changed?
would probably be a good idea to amend this request to include that, all of that portion of lake residential within 010 and 001.
Okay.
Into the CCD.
Can we do that here, or does Mr. Pulliam need to
So we're
sign?
just making a recommendation, we can amend that, we'll still have to have 3 readings and a public hearing from council, so I think we can go ahead and make a recommendation
So-
from this body.
I've got a question, and this may require the gentleman to come to the front and answer it. Is there any urgency right now that we get parcel 10 changed over, beyond the amount of time it's gonna take to change parcel 1? Or is he, I make a motion that he come to the podium and speak to that effect. If
Okay.
he's in a rush to get this one changed, and if not, then we can work through the admin and get
Yes,
them both changed.
To your question, I would say, there's no imminent building plan on the parcel. But while I'm dealing with it, while I noticed it, I said, well, I might as well get that fixed. I was, secondarily unaware of that little strip that you pointed out. I did not know about that little strip in the parking lot. And I don't know if I missed it or something changed, but yeah, I'd like to get both of those, in this request. But as far as timing, I just want to get it fixed.
So I don't think, can we make a recommendation without it being on paper tonight for both of them, or do we need to wait until that paperwork gets done and bring it back?
James, can we do that tonight and recommend adding that sliver? Or adding that change to the other one as well?
I mean, we're adding the whole parcel to the scope now, so.
I think the safest thing is obviously to do 2 separate. I think it would be okay to make a recommendation from this body to include it and let council determine that. So they'll still have to have their public hearing, they'll still have to have their 3 readings.
His next step will be to take the full application to council.
So I will send your recommendation to council to have on when it's approved for their next agenda. They will have first reading, typically in name only. Second reading is typically in name only as well, unless there's something controversial. And then with third reading is when the public hearing is set. We do all the advertising for the public hearing at minimum 15 days in advance. And that's when all the signs go out and the advertising and all that.
We could then go ahead and make the recommendation to council that they accept the 010 and the 001 to be in the full scope of CCD.
Yes.
As our recommendation to council, and then you all can handle the paperwork to get the rest of that fixed.
So were there any objections to this by any of the residents of the subdivision that are nearby? Was any discussion had with the residents?
Not to my knowledge. I don't think anyone knew about this until I was dealing with James on it.
Okay.
So James, can you zoom out?
Yeah.
Not that far, but okay.
Oh, sorry.
So this highlight the parcel that he's, okay. So on the other side of that, no, towards the entrance, who owns that property?
This piece,
Yes, okay, so that's the rest of the subdivision. All right.
That's the HOA entrance.
Right.
Sign, I believe, isn't it?
And they also have another piece over here that's connected.
yes.
Yeah. So my concern is we really can't do one without, I'm not talking about that piece, I'm talking about 101 and 001. We cannot do 010 without doing 001 because you now have surrounded a piece of property that is zoned differently. So the two have to come about at the same time.
The little sliver.
The little
piece.
sliver.
Mhm.
We have no option on that. Just to be in line with the ordinance.
Right, right. Contiguous space there.
Right.
Something that this doesn't show is while it is level with a slight incline on Stamp Creek, it actually, if I'm remembering correctly, that goes up to a pretty steep hill, an elevated hill with the road being up high.
Yes, it does.
That it's not something where you would access from that road into this section from a typical standpoint.
From subdivision? No,
Right.
that's correct.
So I guess the question is going to be, is there opposition to wanting to make this change? Then I'd like to make a proposal that we approve this request while adding in the 001, fixing its adjusted space. I don't know how that best needs to be phrased, James, but I'd like to make a motion that we send a recommendation of approval to county council with also correcting the sliver that is residential also into CCD when the application is forwarded over.
Second.
I think we've got all the questions answered for you, if you'd like to.
All right, thank you.
Is there any discussion regarding that motion? All those in favor then of that recommendation signify by saying aye.
It's unanimous.
All right. Okay, we have item 9. It is a public hearing of the renaming of Jefferson Place to be consistent with South Carolina Code 6-29-1200. So there is a state law that says how this is to be handled, and that shows as this South Carolina Code that's up in front of us here. So there is a process by which that takes place, specifically involving a planning commission's responsibility. It says the commission may, after reasonable notice through a newspaper, change the name of a street when there are duplications of name. Did we do this in a newspaper, or is that still a requirement that it be in
We
the
did this
newspaper?
in the newspaper, it has been advertised, and I have the certification from the auditor in hand, that's been duly advertised.
It looks like from the image that there are 9 parcels affected with 2 existing homes, at least from that photograph. And I don't know if that's an up-to-date photograph or not.
That photograph is from January 13th, 2023.
23.
So at this time, the
Could
stars,
could I get you to actually come up? And for the audience here, go ahead and introduce yourself, since you're our GIS expert.
my name is Nick Walton. I am the Oconee County GIS Manager and the Oconee County Addressing Technician. Showing on the exhibit right here, every star represents an address that actually has been applied for. So they have applied for a building permit to build. So there could be more houses out there than just the ones that are showing on the image there.
So building permits have been applied for everything that has a star on it.
So the first step is to apply for an address, and then you apply for your building permit. So I've assigned that address with their intent to go and apply for a building permit.
Okay. The two houses that are there, just in my looking back, the one at the very end there, 186, that looked to be at least 8 years old, that it was a 2016 build, so they've been there for 8 years at that address. The 194, actually, our records from GIS don't show that there's even a house on it. Or at least there was a no home value under the assessor's office of a resident, of an improvement to the property. But it looks like there's a driveway, and it looks like there's a house on 194. But based on the price that it sold for last, it looks like it was 2012 or 2010 since there was a home there. I guess what I'm pointing out is there's a couple of addresses that are on Jefferson Place Road that have been there for a good 8 to 10 years using that address. Yes, sir.
So my question is, we got two names here. Why have we not narrowed it down to just one name?
James, do you know who it is that's asking for the name change and why we don't have one name on it?
So I originally requested the name change.
Okay.
It was brought to my attention by Roads and Bridges. The original subdivision was supposed to have a loop road where it came back onto itself. So Jefferson Place was supposed to be one road. The subdivision was not completed, so we ended up with two roads with the same name. And what was the second part of that question?
The name,
Oh, the name change. So, our name change policy is we present 3 road names to be reviewed by, planning and by Oconee County Emergency Services Dispatch. Any ones that do not pass that then are, nixed from the list, so we went from 3 to 2, and these are the 2 that got passed through.
Gotcha. And Peachtree wasn't one of those.
sorry.
Nobody here from Atlanta?
No, thank you.
I think it should be Peachtree, Northwest, Southeast.
Industrial.
Yeah. So you have 2 names, and then it's our job to determine which name. And this is do we have to notify those residents that, it seems like we're about to change something. Now, they're not businesses, so they may not have business cards at that address, but they sure might have a whole lot of Christmas postage.
I've got a curiosity question. How come, because Wheatstone Farm Road dead ends, why did we just not extend it up to that Y and run Jefferson Place on the east leg?
So there would be 2 houses that would be changed to Wheatstone rather than 9 houses
Correct.
changed to something.
There would be 5 houses. That'd be, you're talking about so Wheatstone would have to go all the way up to the main road. So main issue here is why it's considered 2 roads is because we do not have continuity. There's that 90-degree turn there. If you wanted to extend Wheatstone Farm all the way up, you could to the main road. The issue is Wheatstone Farm, that is a private road. And Jefferson Place are county roads. So if we extend it, we'd probably need some terminology referencing where county maintenance starts and ends.
It does look like the 50-foot right-of-way there stops down at the bottom. Is that a correct, Kyle?
We've got that throughout the county though. I'm just curious, because then you're affecting fewer parcels of land that way.
Did we provide specific mailing to these people?
No.
It's not a requirement for us to do so. We just go and we just change the name on the sign.
Do they have any idea that we're considering changing the name?
Not if we've not mailed them, and not if they didn't read the
Well,
paper.
So they had no input, no requests?
I was planning on, once we brought this to planning, that we would then do the notice to the affected parties.
So the moment we pick a name, we're also saying, start printing the road sign.
No, I think, I think we'd send out notice to everybody and let them know who would be affected, give them a timeline for that, and then make the changes. Because the way we would go in and change things is we would go in, we reset all the addresses, and then we make our notices to the post office.
So the section I see, the one section of the main Jefferson Place, it's the low series of numbers 104, 106, 108. And the Jefferson Place over here is in the 190s and higher. Is there, maybe I'm wrong on seeing that, but it seems like I've seen, maybe that's just hotel rooms that say this number goes this way and this number goes this way. Is that doesn't happen on road signs at all where 190s and beyond, or Jefferson Place 190s?
Yeah, and then when you come to like a T, and then you divert going left or right, you could have a range going one way and range going another way. The issue is this is not a T, this is a secondary road coming off of the main road, the main named road. So there's possibility of maybe putting a sign there saying that the 190s are down another way.
And we as the county are the ones making the request to change this, is that right?
Yes, because it's a county road.
Because it's a county road. And are we required by state law to change it?
I would have to look at that, but there have been requests by both Roads and Bridges and Emergency Services to change this.
I mean, these guys have been there 10 years plus. I'm surprised that we're just now making this decision. Mr. Nix, are you asking a question there?
Can you pull up a exploded view of that area?
Yeah.
My concerns while he's doing that is that, so we got Jefferson Place is county maintained. Okay. And it looks like they've got the 50-foot right of way in there. But my concerns is, and I have to go back and look at the ordinance, we're making decisions that affect the property owners without the property owners knowing. And that really concerns me because the government is a tool of the citizens, not to be used by the citizens. So I would like to postpone this motion until we have time to review that ordinance.
So it's not actually an ordinance, it's actually it's state law that but I can't tell from reading that, and James, please correct me, are we required to do it? The way I was reading the state law is it says that it's our job to do it if it's to be changed, but are we required to change it?
I don't think there is a requirement. I would obviously want to check with our county attorney. There is a problem. There are lots of problems.
Well, I mean, if fire is asking about it, Roads and Bridges is asking about it, GIS is asking about it, it's obviously an issue. My concern is the fact that there are 9 people there that haven't been notified, other than by newspaper. I would feel much more comfortable if the county would spend a few dollars sending out a letter to these folks saying, hey, we're about to change this on you.
Do you have a formal process that you follow in order to make those notifications? You mentioned that you were going to make notifications once we decided on a name.
Yes, so if we take address changes as an example, if we do have an addressing error in the county, for example, we have it down as something and they've posted it as something else on their structure, we do notify them. We have a form to fill out saying this is what we have as your address. Either we can change it to the one that you have posted, or if it's an error with, what road it's coming off of, we'll notify them of what the actual address assignment is. And we do that through, what's the letter that you have to get a receipt notification? Certified. We send it out as certified mail.
Okay, but in this case where we're considering changing the name of the road that they live on, do you have a formal process for notification? In other words, if we pick the name tonight, if we were to pick the name tonight, would you then be required to notify, or can you notify them ahead of time that a name change is being considered and give them the opportunity to speak to the council?
My intent
Planning
was
Commission, I'm sorry.
to bring us to Planning Commission initially. Once we had a basis to build off of, a road name may be chosen, then we can notify them, because if we send out notification of, it could be these three,
Right.
then you would have multiple parties, want this road, want that road, and if it was a private road, yes, you would need 75% approval of the affected parties, but this is a county road. So, it doesn't specifically say the county needs to choose it, but it does say, in our addressing plan, that if we have a road name change, it does need to come to, planning commission.
So there's no specific requirement to notify them, is what you're saying?
No, but whenever I do make changes, I do
Right.
notify the parties as
Well, they'd
best as
have
I
to be,
can.
so they can make
So,
postal changes and things.
And since I've been in this position for almost 3 years, we've never done a road name change. But we are running into more and more of these issues. We have more and more people coming into the county. And the little things like this, you know, the fire chief that's been here for 50 years knows about it. But then when he retires and the new guy comes in, it's not following a standard system.
so it is a county road, and therefore it sounds like it falls on our shoulders to address it. Yes, sir.
Could you just take the road that turns off and call it Jefferson Place Road South
East.
or East, you know? And that way it retains the same name.
Absolutely. Why we did not choose any variation of Jefferson Place is because currently the name Jefferson Place is not, does not follow our current addressing and road standards. So Jefferson Place, known as a proper name, proper names are not approved for road naming anymore. If you'd like to make an exception to that, I would certainly agree with it, but I did not put it in there initially because it didn't follow our current rules.
So we could come back, make an exception of the name change, and name it something that follows along the line of what it is.
Yes, so right now, a duplicate in the county, we do not accept any duplicates in the county. A duplicate is the same road name, but it also means you can't have variations of the road type. So you can't have Jefferson Place and Jefferson Way. That would be considered a duplicate. But if you wanted to do East Jefferson Way or a variation of the prefix or suffix, not including the road type, then I would have no issue with that.
So Jefferson Drive,
Uh,
Suffolk.
Yes, that would be a changing of the actual road type, so no, that would be considered a duplicate.
Yes, sir.
I think we're being overly bureaucratic here. I think I make a motion, we pick Rosebush Lane and let these guys do their job.
Second.
So the remaining discussion, it is a county road. If we open it up to 9 people to come in and pick a name, that's not ever gonna happen
We
necessarily.
would need the following the private road rule, we would need the 75% approval of the affected parties, which in my experience doesn't happen a lot.
And as I'm understanding it, the road's got to change, and that responsibility falls on our shoulders to do so if emergency management is concerned about it, and Roads and Bridges is concerned about it, and GIS is concerned about it. We have to address it. It's not like we can get their opinion, and their opinion says, we don't want to do anything about changing the name. We've been here too long. We won't ever get our mail anymore. Whatever it is, we still have to change it because it's a county road. Is that a correct understanding and assessment?
That would be the recommendation based on the fact that it goes against the rules of naming roads. And Emergency Services and Roads and Bridges have both brought up the issue of it. But to put into context, yes, everything that's tied to their address would be up to them to change except for the mailing. We would notify the change of mailing to the post office. But the change of the driver's license, the change of electrical and water services, that would all be affected and fall upon the property owners.
So, I've got a question. Stating the rules, what rules are you referencing?
We have an addressing policy, which I can print out and get a copy to everybody.
So it's a county policy?
So I know I referenced rules many times. Was there a specific rule that you were talking about?
Well, no, I was just wondering where you was pulling your rules from or your policies from. So it's a county policy?
Yeah, it's the Oconee County addressing policy.
Okay.
Would it not be easier to do the exception and just put south?
I'm assuming somebody still has to get their driver's license changed ultimately, but they may not have to get it changed as quickly if it's south.
No matter what you put.
Yeah, that's my concern is, even though it's a county road, it's something that affects the citizens in that area. And I just have an issue where we've not reached out to them first and gave them an option of, one, picking the name, two, being here for this meeting to give us input. You know, we don't, like you said, it's a state law, it's not an ordinance, but apparently we do have some policies dealing with this. And that's an area that we might can improve in.
So I do think that if ultimately it comes on our shoulders to make that decision, that we are gonna have to, first and foremost, I agree with you. I think we should be sending a postcard out to them. There's only 9 people. If it was 149 people, the newspaper, yeah, I get it, but 9 people, I think we can send out a letter to say, hey, we're about to do this. Y'all should probably come be aware. When they do come up here and are aware and they say, we don't want to do that, why should we do that? We've been here 10 years. It still falls on us to say, sorry. We just let you know that it was going to be happening. So to let us know that it's going to be happening before or let them know that it's going to be happening after, we still have to let them know it's going to be happening. I'm kind of, push me on one side of the fence or the other, but I'm kind of like you. Why can't we send these people something in advance saying this is about to happen? If there's something that would give us great pause, perhaps they could share that with us.
So,
At the same time, I don't want to necessarily have them up here and me have to look them in the eye and tell them I'm changing it anyway. So, but what say you?
2 people.
I think Mr. Nix made a motion that was seconded.
We're still in discussion. Is there any other discussion on it?
I think not reaching out to the people because there's no name is smart. And I think once we pick a name and then tell them is okay. The decision's been made for them. Most people aren't going to care. Do we know if, how many of these homeowners live here full-time or might be second homeowners and don't live here full-time?
We do not know how many full-time, but if the second part of Jefferson Place coming off of the main part of Jefferson Place was renamed, it would be 8 affected parties.
Jefferson?
So
Where's
here's
Jefferson?
my thought on this. So the whole reason we're sitting here trying to do this is because the fire folks and the road folks have told us there's possibly a safety hazard with responding to an event where they may ride right by it or, have to come back and, how does that affect?
Arrival be
I mean, I know this is a hypothetical scenario, but they're recommending that we change this based on my assumption is the rationale that there's some safety issue with it being the way it is.
I just have a hard time with the governing body doing, we know what's best, we're gonna do it without your knowledge, and we'll let you know what we have decided.
It's just naming a road.
It's just naming the road to us. But what if that road, here's the problem we run into doing hypotheticals. To them, it's not. You're talking about a driver's license change, you're talking about any cards or anything they have printed out. They may be running a business out of that home. They gotta change all that stuff, and we've not heard from them to understand
their
how it
utilities and
affects
things
them.
like
And
that.
the utilities,
I hear what you're saying.
all that stuff, and we're sitting here and we're saying, we're gonna choose for you and not give you a voice. Well, that's the whole thing that we are about, is giving the voice, and we haven't done that here. Even if we decide against what they're stating, we still owe them the right to come and air their grievances.
This is a public hearing, and I'm inclined to say that we've not notified the public sufficiently with as few homes as what there are to notify. I do think it has to be done. I think that Roads and Bridges and Emergency and GIS have said it needs to get done, and I think it needs to get done. But I do think that with only 9 homes, that it's a public hearing and they have the right to have known that. All those in favor of changing the name to, what was it?
Rosebush.
Rosebush, not Peachtree. All those in favor of changing it to Rosebush, signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed?
Motion fails.
I'd like to make a motion that we ask the proper department, whether that's James or whether that's GIS or whether that's Roads and Bridges, to send out a certified letter to these residents that are affected, which looks to be those people, just the 9 people off of this side road, that this name change is going to be happening this year. And that we will be scheduling a meeting on whatever date it is to have a discussion or input from them. And set us a date in the future of one of our meetings for them to come talk to us.
Just a comment
Yes, sir.
on the policies and procedures. Hey, you guys convinced me that I was wrong, so thank you for that. I do believe the public needs to give feedback. So I think if you guys have like a policy and procedure or something that you have for the county, maybe you need to revisit that and incorporate your operating experience from tonight's meeting into that. And that we need to, I think their struggle is they want to tell the public just what, now if they bring just the name to us and say the name is what we need from you guys, we don't need anything else, then we'll go tell these guys, we're going to change it to this name unless you object at the public hearing, then that's probably the proper process. I think y'all will if we would have just voted on the name tonight and not anything else, we probably would have been okay, right? But and then take that to the public and say, here, we're gonna change the name of this unless you guys object to this. Give them the name, not let them go through the hassle of picking the name.
I think that was
Because
the
these
original
guys,
intent.
That's
these
it.
guys use name, they
Yeah.
pick names because there's already duplicate names in the system.
System.
And they don't wanna have to,
So what
to
you're
battle
saying
out
is
that
our
part.
responsibility was to choose a name and not to choose a policy or a procedure.
Yes.
But
Yes.
we're under the belief that they would not be able to come in unison and choose the name for themselves. But we did not give them that opportunity. That's the problem.
They're not privy to the process and procedure for, we could give them a list.
Well,
Do we want to give them a list and have them come here and argue over that?
Well, I think part of that process would be interacting with that department. A policy is not a law.
Right.
It's just a policy. And I'm sure they could come, if they were all in agreement, hey, we want this to be the name, I'm sure you would be happy to work
It
with
doesn't
them.
matter what name they change it to, it's still gonna be a pain in the butt to do what they gotta do.
Right,
I
but-
think they're gonna be fussing about the change to any name. It doesn't really matter what name they change it to, in my opinion, as far as the bureaucracy piece. We're gonna have to deal with
But it's far
that.
easier pill to swallow if they feel they have input.
So you've got, what was it, 8 or 9 potential residents on this road, and what if they come up with 8 or 9 different names?
Then that falls on us then.
It falls
But we've
on us
not-
right now.
But we have not gave them, here's the problem I have. The policy does not give them the opportunity. That's the problem I have.
I understand that, I really do. I'm not
So
disagreeing
that's
with
the-
that part of it all.
Once we give them the opportunity and they can't make a decision, well, then that's when we step in and we do what's the betterment of the whole.
And I guess my point is that it's written the way it is written right now, specifically because we could end up with 9 irritated residents with 9 different names, and we're gonna end up having to make a decision, and you're gonna have a bunch of unhappy people.
You're gonna have 8
regardless.
irritated residents.
Or we pick none of them.
Kyle is asking to speak from Roads and Bridges. Can we make a motion to give him that opportunity?
Second.
Absolutely.
So all of those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank y'all.
Never
Kyle
done this
Reed with Roads and Bridges. Just wanted to give y'all a little bit more background from our standpoint or our end of it. So this has always been a quagmire, you know, it's always been a thing. There's a lot of instances in the county where you have things that may not meet the sign ordinance policy or, you know, our sign policy, our ordinance, things like that. That just, you know, development's kind of messy at times. So what we do, and I know what James and them can speak more to what they do for zoning stuff or whatever else. Like if we're gonna shut down a road, we put up a sign that says this road's gonna be shut down, you know, blah, blah, blah. Gives our number to get feedback. We tell them a date of a meeting or something like that. I think more to this, and I don't wanna step on anybody's toes or speak out of turn or anything like that, but, so whenever I bring a road closure, or somebody's brought a road closure to me, I bring it to Transportation Committee, which I know is a committee of council, but, a little different, but, yeah, we all wanna know kinda what's the, kinda take the test to see if it's something that y'all are looking at doing or willing to do, or willing to look at, when to get feedback on, that kinda stuff, before we go down that road. Changing road names has always been a thing. It's always been we've gone through several instances of talking about this or looking at this, and it's always kind of come up to, it's hard, kind of deal. I'm sorry.
So does the road name change go through the Transportation Committee?
No, y'all are the body that handles, road names.
You thought that it was gonna be that
We can
easy.
name roads, but we can't close them or open them.
Yeah.
Let me ask,
That
let me
may
ask
have
one
put
more
that on
time
y'all
so
for
that
a
I can make sure I understand and for both of you all to answer. It could or could not be Jefferson Place East as a road.
If you wanted to make an exception to our current road naming guidelines, yes.
Is there any paperwork involved in that? Can we make that decision here and now?
James, do you have any input on that?
What paperwork would be involved, or?
Can we make that decision here and now, or is there a process?
Yes, you can make that decision to, I think, we don't have to advertise the names again, or would we have to advertise the names again? If you put a different name?
It's the same name, just we're adding prefix, east.
I don't
It
know
would
the
be an
answer to that.
official road name change.
To me, if I was a resident on that road, I'd go, okay, Jefferson Place East.
Makes sense.
I'll get my driver's license changed over the course of the year, and I'll get my utilities changed over the course of the next year and a half. But Duke's still gonna know where to send my bill to, and the pizza place is still gonna know where to get to my house. As opposed to any other street means absolutely nothing to that. I could stomach the pill of Jefferson Place East right now.
And then we can make notices to all the affected parties, letting them know about that.
Is there an appetite for doing that? It seems like a way to do it and get it done. We aren't following through by giving notice in advance, but I will say that, as has been spoken, we will have 9 people up here and 8 angry ones that their choice of Peachtree Street was not chosen.
But are we being selfish by, I understand what you're saying. It's easier on us to have them not come up here and have the discussion
Or easier on
about
them,
changing their
maybe.
name. And that's basically what we're saying. Versus giving them an opportunity to come up here and then them realize that we are confined by what names we can use, and this is the ones we have to choose from. I feel that it'd behoove us to give them that opportunity versus just getting a slip of paper saying, hey, your road's changed.
So
Instead-
if I may, a lot of the time, whenever we put up a sign, whatever, I don't know what James's, count would be or whatever, but on most things, whenever we get put up a sign and we request public feedback, stuff like that, a lot of those issues are mitigated in our offices.
Right.
It's not really you know, you may get whoever is really passionate about it, and they should come up here. I mean, that's you know, kind
So
of the
have
deal
we-
with what y'all are talking about, so they
I
should
didn't
come
mean
up
to
here.
interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
So have we put up a sign?
I would think it would be like no, I'm saying we could. I would say we just notice like a zoning hearing.
I
Notice. I'll bet
understand
a
what
big
you're
street
saying.
sign. I don't think it's needed for that.
But I don't think the principle of the matter, I believe we should stick to our guns and let the people treat us as a tool and use us as a tool and give them the input. We're trying to, I know how I would feel about it if you came up and changed Haney Road.
Right.
You know, I'm passionate about that name. I'm passionate about that road. It's got history with it. And if I just drove up one day and seen that the road sign had changed, I wouldn't be too happy. And I would feel like, how did my government, that's supposed to work for me, change this road without even notifying me that it's planning to? That's the problem I have. But it's not the point of changing the road, it's the point of we feel that we should only tell them after that. That's the problem I have.
Did I have a motion on the table?
You did.
You did.
I'd like to amend that motion if I could.
Do you wanna withdraw and just start fresh?
We'll withdraw the motion. I'd like to make a motion that we send these residents saying that we are changing your road name. I don't know how to structure the motion. What I'm wanting to say is we're changing your road name and it's our plan to change it to Jefferson Place East, but we would like your input prior to our doing so.
I would
Second
mention
that.
also, if I can add to that, at the request of Emergency Services and Road Management.
Yes. I don't really want them to see that there's a big choice, but we do want them to have input on, hey, wait, just, can you hold off 6 months because of X, Y, Z that we haven't thought about?
Or they may come together and say, we prefer
This other road.
Peachtree. So there you go.
So how long are we giving them to respond or show up here?
Well, you're gonna set a meeting date with that letter that says it's gonna be back on our agenda on this date.
I think probably
need a
right now,
second.
we're looking at, sorry.
We need a second on my motion.
So you just can't let them come in here and pick a name randomly, because if they pick Peachtree, it might already be,
In the
Oakley
system.
might already have a Peachtree Lane or a Peachtree
Right.
Road. We have to give them a list if we're gonna,
Well,
Or have them
we've
work
got
with the
two and we're
department.
adding one, right? We've got two names that he's already designated and we're adding one.
And so we put those two names and add one, and they add one Jefferson Place East.
Did we have a second?
I'll second that.
Just get it over with.
I know y'all may have to go back and watch the video to get our input. Are we messing you all up by doing it this way?
Oh, no, this was an issue that we saw, and we thought we'd bring it to you, so that we could maybe fix the issue that we've been running into.
We definitely want to get the issue fixed for you. We just feel like that there needs to be some steps that we've kind of, as a group, have kind of committed to as far as making sure the citizen input is there.
And if I may say, this is an old issue. We have different ways of naming and different ways for planning for naming now that we don't run into these issues where we have, part of a subdivision that doesn't get completed, things like that. So it's planned out more so we don't run into these issues now.
Thank you from all of us, that we don't see this on a regular basis. I hate to try to repeat that motion, but if everybody understood the gist of it, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. All those opposed, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Very
much.
much. Sorry to put you through that. All right. The last item on the agenda is a discussion regarding amending Chapter 38. It is item 10. It's regarding the setbacks in build zones category. Just a quick recap. As a basic understanding, a setback is the distance inside your property line. It's measured from the property line, and it's an area where you cannot be building vertically. The thought is that you don't want the edge of your front door right up against the road. So there's a setback off of the road before you start building vertically with things. That said, there are some exceptions. You can put a driveway. You can put a sidewalk through that setback. You can build a fence or a freestanding wall or a hedgerow. If anybody remembers the cement pond in the Beverly Hillbillies, it had that nice hedgerow. There's also things that can slide over, which would be steps, or an HVAC unit can go over the setback, but still no closer than 5 feet from the property line. And then of last year, of course, all improvements to a property must be maintained on that property. In other words, not go over the property. So the questions come up about retaining walls, with the suggestion that a retaining wall is like a fence, shouldn't be subject to the setback requirements, that it's not necessarily building vertically, it's retaining earth, things like that. So that's the subject up for discussion. We first have public comments from Mr. Tom Markovich.
Thank you. For the record, I'm Tom Markovich. I just wanted to mention, because James and I had a conversation to the side, and we talked about two different ways of doing this. And one is to include retaining walls in that sentence, or James suggested possibly removing freestanding walls. I think that's what you said.
So just remove freestanding and just
Yeah.
allow
Oh, yeah,
walls.
freestanding and allow walls. Yeah, I guess if it's just freestanding and you lose walls,
Or just add the retaining walls to the list with freestanding walls. I think there's a couple different ways you can.
yeah, I think I would go with the retaining walls. And I just want, just so that in the future, when you go on and find a better job, the next person that has to interpret will be able to interpret it. Anyway, that's just my suggestion, is that retaining walls actually be added. Thank you.
James, I had submitted a couple of pictures of what retaining walls, could potentially look like. This would be a retaining wall kind of running parallel, or in theory, running parallel to a property line. The next one being a retaining wall that would run perpendicular to a property line. There were some that I guess I didn't include, but those were called, what did you call them? They were part of the structure of the
Yeah,
basement?
when it's attached to the foundation, it'd be a stem wall.
A stem wall. So if we actually remove the word freestanding and just had walls, stem walls might then be included. And we don't necessarily want a basement wall to be, that protrudes out to catch a window or allow for a window to be interpreted in there. So it may be best to in fact add, as opposed to simply remove freestanding. You don't have those pictures, do you?
I do not any longer.
Okay.
but I can-
No, that's okay.
So is a retaining wall not a freestanding wall?
We've had this discussion a lot too, of what, so freestanding would typically be free on all sides, not retained or holding back something.
Not
Retaining
encumbered
wall-
by a load on one side?
If you stack these retaining wall blocks up by themselves, they'll fall down. It's not freestanding.
My question is, so
True.
driveways are allowed to be in the setback.
Yes.
So what happens when you're cutting below grade?
Do they move? They are.
I mean, do they put a retaining wall in?
A lot of times they use like a product like a GeoGrid,
Okay.
and then we have, we've approved variances for retaining walls for driveways specifically.
So we are, and we have in the past,
Yes.
allowed retaining walls.
The retaining wall in this picture specifically, one of the concerns I had was it potentially pushes water off onto another property. We were talking about that. We already have an ordinance in place that says you've got to still maintain where your water goes. Is that, can
My
you?
land development, has a drainage and stormwater section, and it's not super long, but it's a little bit longer than, it's more than half a page. The essence of that is that you are responsible for the changes to the topography that you make during development. So if you change the course of stormwater going off of your property, you can't redirect it onto your neighbor's property and have adverse effects on them. So you have to find a way to manage the stormwater you are channeling.
Is there any other adverse reason that a retaining wall would go up to a property line? Taking the first picture as an example, I mean, do we create something that is a height above 30 inches that if somebody falls off of? I mean, we're assuming at that point that they have in fact crossed over the property line. Kyle has asked to speak again. Can we give him, if he's got some insight on this?
Motion for Kyle to speak.
Second, all those in favor?
Mark Mitch actually wanted to speak also.
And I'm sorry, this may be what Tom was wanting to talk about, but GeoGrid, whenever you build these retaining walls, GeoGrid goes behind them. So if you go 5 feet up to a property line, then you may run onto somebody else's property with the GeoGrid of the wall. So that the distance of the wall to the property line may be mitigated by the GeoGrid, the height of the wall, that kind of stuff. So,
Well, the other thing I was gonna mention, instead of just fixing your minds on that type of retaining wall, we build them out of concrete. We build them out of railroad ties. And when we're building them out of railroad ties, we're using interlocking ties that go back into the bank. Now, you still have to be, every builder has to be very conscious of where that property line is, because he's not allowed, period, to go across that property line, no matter what. And so you always have to keep that in mind as to the type of wall you're building, designing, whatever. But there are so many different types. I mean, sometimes we're building retaining walls that are nothing but boulders. So there's just so many different things. But Kyle's right about the geo.
So, to both of y'all's point, if I understand correctly, that the type of wall still says we police our own setback based on what we're gonna be using so that we do not touch or disturb the neighboring property.
Exactly right. You have to. And in terms of water, that's state law. State law says you cannot shed water. So-
and may just want to add something like and appurtenances to walls, kind of thing.
Say that,
And appurtenances to walls, anything involved in like dead men or anything like that that's involved in building them, you may want to add, that too.
so the fences, freestanding walls, retaining walls, and any appurtenances?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Does anybody have any additional discussion on this? Would somebody like to make a motion?
Or would there be a height limitation on it?
If something hits a certain height, is there an engineered requirement at that point?
After it goes to 4 feet.
If it goes above 4 feet, there's an engineering requirement, and the engineer would then predicate the setback based on what they're gonna need behind that height requirement to support it. So they fix their own setback off the property line based on that height. It's a good question. I make a motion then that we add retaining walls to J under section 38(9.3), section J, fences, freestanding walls, retaining walls and appurtenances, hedges, and septic lines may be located in any setback so long as they remain on the property. Is there a second to this?
Second.
Is there any additional discussion? All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Gentlemen, I think that concludes our agenda. Motion to adjourn.